If you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck and you want to break free from the cycle of debt, then Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki is a great starting point. The book emphasizes the concept around how the rich make money work for them, whereas the poor and middle class have to work for money. I highly recommend this book if you're looking to gain financial empowerment. Let's go through the 5 life-changing financial habits that I learned from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. 1. The importance of financial education. It's not about how much you make, it's rather about how much you can actually keep. This book places a strong importance on financial literacy, and it explores the concept around why so many people struggle with money. The traditional schooling system does not adequately prepare people on how to manage money, let alone making financial decisions for themselves. But what is financial literacy? This is defined as having an understanding around the language of money. So this involves understanding concepts around financial statements, taxes, understanding what an asset or a liability is, and being able to manage your own personal finances. In the book, Robert Kiyosaki vividly portrays the contrast difference between Robert's rich dad and his poor dad. Now, Robert's poor dad is his biological father. He is someone who possesses remarkable education and intelligence. He has worked up the corporate ladder, and he's been able to secure multiple scholarships and promotions in his career. However, with these advantages, he still struggled with money and got himself into debt, and even after his passing, he left his family with unsettled bills to pay. On the other hand, Robert's rich dad, who is his best friend's father, is someone who left the 8th grade and went on to become a successful entrepreneur, in fact, one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. After his passing, he left millions behind for his family, for the community, and for the church as well. Here's what I gather from this. Traditional education is great to land you a job, great to get you into university, and it does help with building lifelong skills. However, it does stop there, because ultimately, you will need to work harder in your job to be able to increase your income. This is unfortunate that the effort and the hours you put into work are directly correlated with how much money you make. And at the end of the day, there is going to be a breaking point where you can no longer work as hard. And this is where financial literacy comes in, because it allows you to break away from that cycle of having to work harder and harder to make more money. Understanding personal finance allows you to transcend the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. It allows you to find fulfillment in the work you do without feeling guilty about taking time off work. As Robert himself points out, the rich focus on their balance sheets, which looks at assets and liabilities, whereas the poor and middle class earners look at their income statements, which is tracking their income and their expenses. 2. Build assets, not liabilities. The rich acquire assets, whereas the poor and middle income earners acquire liabilities that they think are assets. Now, what is an asset? An asset is anything that can be used to produce a positive economic value. A liability is something that a person or a company owes, usually a large sum of money. Quite simply put, assets put money into your pocket, whereas liability takes money out of your pocket. The question around owning your own house and whether that's an asset or a liability has been a long-standing debate. According to Robert's viewpoint, having your own property and living in it is considered to be a liability because it takes money out of your pocket with the mortgage repayments, with the taxes, with your utilities and your council rates. And in the event of unemployment, it often becomes financially unsustainable and therefore leading many people having to sell it. On the other hand, owning an investment property doesn't put you in that same situation, because say you lose your job, you still have tenants who are able to pay for your mortgage and to pay for all your other expenses. And at the end of the day, if you've bought well, it also puts money into your pocket. The way that I look at it is that your owner-occupied property is only considered an asset if you actually extract the equity that has been built up in the house and you use it towards other investments. If you just decide to hold onto your property, then you aren't really getting that economic value or benefit that really defines it as an asset. Unless, of course, you decide to sell your home. Also, the other issue is that if you've held your house for a longer period of time, then you may actually struggle to be able to extract that equity, because being able to extract that equity means your income also has to increase as well. And if it's not significant enough, then unfortunately you won't be able to tap into the equity that's been tied up into the house. And if that's the case, then it's considered a liability in my opinion. Now let's look at 3 diagrams that explain how the poor, middle class, and the rich utilize their money when they get paid. Looking at the cash flow of a poor person, we can see that the salary that they get from their job is used to pay for expenses like their taxes, rent, food, transportation, and clothes. And they've got nothing in their balance sheets, as you can see. Moving on to the middle class, we can see that their salary goes towards getting liabilities, because now that they've got additional income, they can afford a mortgage, they can get a car loan, they can get credit card debt, and then they look at paying off their expenses. However, they still don't have assets. Now, looking at a rich person's cash flow, we can see that they first accumulate assets. They've got real estate, stocks, bonds, notes, and intellectual property. From this, they've been able to generate an income for themselves through the forms of rental income, dividends, interest, and royalties. They use this income to then pay for their expenses. The key takeaway here is to acquire assets and not liabilities, because they will drain your resources. 3. Work to learn, don't work for money. Job security meant everything to Robert's poor dad. However, learning meant everything to Robert's rich dad. Now, this really struck a chord within me, because Robert Kiyosaki was interviewed by a journalist who revealed to him that she wanted to be a best-selling author like Robert himself. Her novels were praised by many, but unfortunately, that didn't really go anywhere. Robert suggested that she take up a course in sales. Now, the journalist was offended and mentioned that she had a master's in English literature and she didn't really see how a course in sales would help her. She said that she would never stoop so low, and she ultimately left the interview. We see so many talented and highly educated individuals around us who struggle with money and are holding themselves back due to ignorance. Most people are usually only one skill set away from achieving greatness. Many of us have been taught to just specialize in one skill. However, if we specialize in 2, that could increase our income exponentially. Robert's poor dad advised him to master just one craft, whereas Robert's rich dad told him to learn a little bit about a lot. And that is why Robert had varied experiences over his career. Here's what I think. As humans, we're great at working hard, so why not take it a step further to be able to maximize our potential? In the case of the journalist, had she listened to Robert and taken a course in ad copywriting, or even understanding sales, or even getting work experience at an advertising agency, she would understand how to get millions in free publicity, a skill that she could have used into turning her novel into a bestseller. Personally, growing up, I worked within the hospitality industry, retail, professional services, banking, law, and even fast food, and the amount of knowledge and experience I learned across those various industries is truly invaluable. 4. Overcoming obstacles. The primary difference between a rich person and a poor person is how they manage their fear. Now, when it comes to fear, the only people who haven't lost money investing are those people who haven't invested at all. Everyone has a fear of losing money, and it's a matter of how you manage that fear that sets you apart. Managing fear comes from investing early, and they say the best possible time to invest was yesterday, and the second best possible time is now. So how do rich people become rich? They've obviously invested a lot of money, but they would have also lost a lot of money as well. It's a game of trial and error and being patient. Cynicism. Our own self-doubt and the doubt of others around us will usually stop us from acting. We tend to play it safe and opportunities pass us by. We as humans are quickly absorbed by the rumors around doom and gloom, and this is ultimately what stops us from investing. However, savvy investors know that the worst times are generally the best times to buy. There's a saying by Warren Buffett that goes, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful." A friend of Robert says that he wants to purchase an investment property. This friend of Robert speaks to his neighbor, and the neighbor advises him against it and says, "I don't think it's a good deal." That best friend decides to not invest, and because of that information, he ultimately lost in a deal which now could be worth tens of millions of dollars. And fun fact, that neighbor actually had no experience in investing at all. Yet everyday people like us, we always rely on the advice of people who we think are going to provide us with value, but in fact have had no experience in doing it themselves. Overcoming laziness. The biggest form of laziness is saying that you're too busy. You're too busy to take care of your health, your wealth, and your relationships. The thing is, it's all got to do with your mindset and how you train it. Rather than saying, "I can't afford it," say, "How can I afford it?" This actually opens up your brain and starts figuring out solutions to get you there. When Robert quit his 9-to-5 job, he said, How can I afford to never have to go back to a 9 to 5 again? Because of this thought process, his mind started thinking of alternative streams of income. But your brain starts switching into solutions mode and it starts fending for yourself, and it ultimately works out because you've got this pressure on you to succeed and perform. Overcoming bad habits. Robert's poor dad paid everyone first and himself last, and by the end of it, he had no money left for himself. Rich Dad did the opposite, even when he was short of money. The reason Rich Dad paid himself first was because he knew that the government and creditors would come knocking on his door if he didn't pay his bills or any debts on time. This made him work harder and think of alternative methods of paying the government back. Whereas if you pay yourself last, you don't have that pressure or that drive to make more money because you know all your debts have been paid for. And finally, here are a few things that you can do in your day-to-day life to increase your chances of building financial literacy. Stop doing what you're doing and take a break. We all know the definition of insanity is doing the same task again and again and expecting a different result. Take a break from your job, perhaps 2 weeks, and sit and do nothing. It's usually out of boredom that new ideas spark and businesses are formed. Talk to someone who has done what you want to achieve. For me, that was my partner. I wanted to purchase investment properties, so I spoke to my partner on how to do it. Achieving financial freedom requires self-education around the concepts of money. So train yourself, attend seminars, read books, take up courses. Choose your friends wisely. The power of association is like no other. When you have people around you talking about entrepreneurship, businesses, money, investing, productivity, being in that environment alone, the knowledge around you is going to impact you and you're going to want to make a difference. Pay your professionals well. The power of good advice is so underrated. Outsource things to your advisors, get property managers. This will not only make them money, but if they're making money, you'll also make money as well. And finally, use assets to buy luxury items. If you can't afford to buy a luxury item twice without feeling guilty about it, then you can't afford it. Instead, focus on building your assets, and the income that you generate from your assets, use those funds to purchase your luxuries. At the end of the day, action always beats inaction. That's it from me today, guys. I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.